Coming up today on Let's Talk Non-League, we have Darrell Queeley, first team manager of Forest Hill Park FC, to talk about his time as a player and a manager in non-league football, and also high performance of non-league football.
It's such a open question because it could mean so many different things. So, and then if you know our wonderful Ladywell Arena, it's everything that I wanted to practice we were doing, because these boys need a lot of reassurance about their game.
Good afternoon, everyone. Obviously, this is a podcast for everyone. This is about high performance and non-league. We just want to find out what it means to managers, players, fans, groundsmen, chairmen, everyone just in general, just to find out what it means to them. Our guest today, we've got the one and only Mr. Forest Hill, someone that's developed a lot of young players that play step 2, step 3, even into the professional game as well. He's an ex-manager for 10MB, where he's created a lot of players again. So if you look at players in the Scaffold League now, people like Louis Clark. If you look into Chelmsford, Adi Aluo, they all come under what Darrell's done in the past couple of years. So yeah, welcome to the podcast, Darrell.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Obviously, this is Miles, and obviously myself. Miles are hosting this together. So we just want to find out, we just want to kick off by asking you, what does high performance look like in your word?
It's such a open question because it could mean so many different things to different people. High performance to me would be getting the best out of my players, best out of my club and my situation, according to what my club can offer, the facilities, and it's just going beyond football. It's going beyond training. That's how I would see it. High performance, getting my players to give me the most they can give. You know, knowing that we only train once a week, knowing that we're not paying players. Knowing that a lot of the players that come into our club, we don't know their histories, we don't know that a lot of their attitudes. So we're kind of making up as we go, really. So that for me, that's high performance. How we get it, that's another, again, big open question. Big open.
Like you said, you train once a week, and in your training session, you've only got about 2 hours to work with the players. How do you not really get high standard from the boys and obviously get the most out of them in that 2 hours? What sort of things, what kind of statements do you put out? What kind of drills do you have to do to get the best out of them in that small amount of time that you've got with them?
Yeah. So we've got 2 hours a week in I would say 8-a-side, if I'm being nice, an 8-a-side size pitch, and which is really difficult for us, particularly the fact that it's a 3G pitch. And then if you know our wonderful Ladywell Arena, it's not a 3G pitch, and the conditions don't really match. So if we played on a 3G pitch, it would help. It would be useful to play small-sided games and to move the ball around really quickly. That works for us away from home and probably helps with us developing individual players. But for a team, a lot of the things that we probably find most beneficial in that short space is just working on, first of all, basics, just getting players to do basics, and then really just shape on and off the ball if we can. Just having that consistency and persistence in what we're asking the boys to do on a Sunday where we can. It's hard to replicate 11-a-side on a small 8-a-side pitch. It's very difficult. It's impossible to replicate the pitch, particularly our home ground, which we're going to be playing 50% of our games on a small-sided 3G pitch. But for us, it's just really about consistency, drilling the same things over and over and over again. When I started out as a young coach, I always used to turn up to every training session trying to show something new that I can do. So whether the players needed it or not, we're doing counter-attacks this week. Whether the players needed it or not, we're doing long balls or short balls, and everything that I wanted to practice, we were doing. And often that didn't relate to what we needed on a pitch. So, you know, with age and experience, I've learned that consistency, sometimes doing the same things over and over again, is more beneficial than you showing how good you are as a coach and how much knowledge you have. Because some of the knowledge that you have, maybe no use to the level and the players that you have. I think you know that as well. We've done a bit together in the past and we've seen other coaches and managers go into clubs that have been at Arsenal or Chelsea, and they come in with this mindset they're going to teach all of these different things, and it doesn't relate to the football that we're playing. So you do learn over the years to kind of be consistent and persist with what you know works for you.
So what made you, at what stage did you understand, obviously you started managing as a young coach, at what stage did you understand this is how I want my team to look like, this is how I want to play, this is the type of player I wanted? At what age did you actually start learning, and what made you realize what type of players you want and what type of football you want to play?
When I first came into it, I was Pep, Frank Rijkaard, just get the ball down, play. That was me. Anyone who knows me from back in the day, it was all about total football. Like what's he doing up in the air? I never used to understand that. Then what you find is you will play some teams where you've played really well, dominated the ball, and you've lost 2-0, and they score from 2 set pieces. And there's only so many weeks in a row you can go, we played well this week, boys, but, you know, we lost. Before you start to really recognize that your ideals aren't helping your team, your ideals aren't what the level requires, right? So I would say, I wouldn't say seasons. I would say it took 15, 16 of those losses. That could have been over a course of 4 seasons, where you're going home and like, we played really well today, didn't we? We passed the ball, and then you hear your players saying similar things that you're thinking, like these lot we played today, they're not good. They're not good. How have we lost today? They're not good. And you're like, oh, this is 4 times now. Yeah, it's all good saying they're not good. And then you kind of have to say what you're thinking and what you've been saying. And it sounds stupid. You're like, what are you lot talking about? They're rubbish. We lost 3-0 today. What are you talking about? What do you mean we played them off the park? We lost today. And when you start to get to that level of frustration, I think that's when you really decide, you know what, there's different styles of play. And I'm going to have to find a way that starts putting more points on the board, and also develops the players for other clubs that they might go to as well.
That's good. So obviously you've produced players over and over again from step 7 to, I think it was in step 7 before, and some of your players are playing step 2, but you still carried on like producing the top players that are still looking to get out. Because I've seen some of the boys that you've got in your squad right now. It's absolutely immense what work you're doing. What drives you to want to, how do you get these players, and what drives you to get this kind of players? What do you do to get this kind of players? What work do you put in? What effort do you put in?
The effort, it's a lot of effort. Put it that way, it is a lot of effort. And one of the most important things is being you, right? Being you, being yourself. Players want to play for you. They have to want to play for you. And when you realize that you are a huge part of why players come to you, then you have to be your best self all of the time. Players have to enjoy their football. Yeah, you know just as much as I do over the years. For many of these players, we are their uncles, we are their dads, we are their cousins, we are their whatever you name it, your counselor. Sometimes we get home, have to turn off the phone or turn it around so we can just talk to the missus, because the phone's going off, because these boys need a lot of reassurance about their game and about all sorts of things that have happened. So first of all, to get these type of players, it's there's a lot of love and care, and it's a firm love and care as well. It's not soft love and care; it's firm, telling them straight, and that's what will have players continue coming to me and to a club like ours for the love that we can offer. So yeah, it's how we develop them. Um, it's trying to play the right way. Okay, so I've seen a lot of teams get promotion, push on, and none of their players leave or are good enough to leave, but they have a very effective team, which makes sense. But they continually bypass several players in their team and get it to one player in their team, which is fine. Listen, I've no qualms with that. But when you come to one of my teams, my left back has to improve. My right back has to improve. My centre backs have to get better, because if we don't, we get smashed. Do you know what I mean? They have to improve. So we are able to spend more time on improving the individuals and little parts of their game, where I think if you've got, you know, £1,000 to £6,000 a week, you can go out and get players who know what they're doing, and you don't have to improve them because they're good enough for that level, because you've gone and got them from one or two leagues above. So they come down and play, and they just stay there because they're comfortable there. They win you the league, get up, then some of them drop back down and do the same thing over and over and over again. But because they've mastered that level, and they're never pushed to do better. That's why they go up to, let's say, their step 5. They go up to step 4, then they drop back down and play for step 5 team, because they're never pushed, because they're always going to one of the teams that can get promotion. So they get promotion, and promotion, when they go up, they're not good enough, because their game isn't being pushed. It's not being expanded. Where a club like mine, if I get a player that doesn't play on a half turn, yeah, if I get a player that doesn't know how to call for the ball, if I get a player that doesn't know how to cross the ball, I have to coach that. And then once you're in that world of coaching and development, like, well, sky's the limit, really. You want the best out of every single player.
Thank you for that. So to get the best out of yourself, to make sure that you're on high performance at all times as well, what do you do outside football that makes you on top of your game? And what do you do that actually makes Darrell, this is Darrell's team, and we're going to get the best out of Darrell's team every week? What do you do? And if you want to tell our listeners.
Yeah. First and foremost, you got to be around the right people. You got to be around the right people. You got to have the right staff, the right support. When I started out initially, and it was pep. And I think every young coach needs to go through this. I don't see it as a bad thing. I think every young coach needs to start off and do whatever it is you want. Don't listen to no one else, because you kind of have to decide what works for you. You have to do whatever you want. And then once you've done whatever you want, then you start getting people around you to help you. And then once people have come around you and helped you, you then decide again, okay, based on these good people that I've had around me, this is what I want. Yeah, and this is what works best for me. And then once you have that, then again, you go again and you get good people around you who can support that, right? So at the minute for me, I'm probably at that stage where I've worked with different people. I've gone out and done all of my ideas as I would want. Now it's like getting good people around me who can support the ideas that I've picked up along the way. And to support me, those people are so needed. You know, you need that. Like, listen, Darrell, I hear what you're saying, but don't go back on this. Don't go back on that, because that worked. Remember what you said three months ago, because we know it can get very difficult when you've got too many different ideas, and all the ideas can be good. But if someone's doing rice and peas and someone's doing jollof, there's a problem. Do you know what I mean? And then when you're telling the players that it needs this or it needs that, and you're contradicting each other, then you're not getting rice and peas or jollof. You're getting special fried rice, and it's a mess. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think it's important to have people around you that can take you back to your ideas, not pull you away. Because as a manager, if you're someone who questions your own performance, which I do, and many managers do, you don't need to be questioned and doubted. You probably need to be taken back to your initial ideas rather than further away from them.
Obviously, now you're just saying that. See, when you was playing back then, you was a big character in the changing room. We can all tell by the your personality right now. At what stage did you think, do you know what, I'm going to go into management? When you was playing, what stage did you actually think, do you know what, I want to give it this a go?
As you said, I've always been that sort of guy. Probably too much at times. The funny story. Recently, I've spoken to some people, and I was like, "We had such a good team that year. Do you remember we had such a good team?" They're like, "Yeah," and I was like, "But then you left. Why?" They're like, "D, I love you, but you was too much." Like, so at times. At times I was like, "What? You left because of me? Like, I loved you. What's going on?" I thought I was nice, but you know, I probably like you, AJ. We grew up in changing rooms where we went in there as 19-year-olds, and there were guys in there that were 32 that would dress you down, and you're going like this. Does he want to fight me? Like, do we want to meet in a car park? And because you're young, you think that's where it's at. And then one of the other senior players has to pull you to one side, like, "No, D, he just loves you, mate. He just wants the best out of you. But he's effing and blinding. He's gonna kick you up your ass if you don't." Right. And I grew up around that. And thankfully, because I think you kind of need a little bit of that, right? Like, it gets you across the line. You hated that guy because you know the worst thing is that guy was never even good. He wasn't even good, and that's what would upset you about that guy. But take him out of the change room or take him out of the team, you're losing games, right? Those guys are important, those characters. So yeah, back to your original question, because it just brought it up to me because I had that discussion earlier. Yeah, always been what I felt was an influence on my team, on my team's performances. So whether I was the manager or not, the manager would always come to me. Once I got to a certain age, probably about 22, managers would always ask me what my thoughts were, who do I think should be playing, what formations we should play. And then before you knew it, I was taking sessions because I would help out my little brother's team. And obviously, once I had my sons, I started coaching their teams, and then it just became natural to start coaching a team. And I think I got to probably about 28 at Sevenoaks Town I was. And I just started taking all the sessions, first team sessions. I became joint manager with a guy called Simon at the time. And I kind of, from that journey, I just went on from there and just stuck in management really, and stopped playing. I could still do a bit here and there, but it kind of came around the time I got married, and you know what happens there to the tummy. The wife starts feeding you regularly, do you know what I mean? And then you get a bit chubby and you can't be bothered to play. You got the kids. So yeah, I kind of stopped playing and went into management. And then I probably found I got a lot more from that than playing at a particular time, probably because I couldn't run as much as I used to. And I was a dynamic player. And when you can't run, you're like, bro, I'm actually quite dead. Yeah, so yeah, when you lose that physicality, a bit like Cristiano Ronaldo, yeah, when you lose that physicality that you have and your game is not the same, it does play on you a bit. But yeah, once I went into being a joint manager at Sevenoaks Town, I've just been stuck with it. Then gone from, my thing has just always been since then, community clubs. Yeah, I've only ever come out. Well, I've never come out of community clubs, and generally, I've gone to do bits with probably like yourself, and then I just go back to the community. It's always been community. I've been offered to coach at high levels and go and do bits at high levels, but that really doesn't interest me. Like helping young players on their journey interests me, and being in the community, because these boys need a lot more than just football coaching.
Yeah, it's like the influence that guy. So it's like that influence that guys had on you in that changing room, where it was an older head, and he obviously looked after you, and he really got onto you because he knew how good you was. I think that is that experience that you brought into it, and your mentality changed, and that's why you like to help young players out.
Yeah, no, it really is. Yeah, no, leadership is vitally important. Leadership, and just an arm around your shoulder. And I think it's a mixture of the guy that would shout and scream at you and swear at you, and also the guy that also put his arm around me and said, "Listen, this is what Pete means." Like, do you know what I mean? Pete, he's like that, but if you come, yeah, like for the first 6 months or something, you probably wouldn't even go to the bar after that. You just wasn't ever comfortable around the lads. You just go straight home. And then you had that one place, oh, Darrell, you need to come to the bar. You know, he's actually not a monster. He's all right. And then you go to the bar once or twice, and they tell a couple of jokes, some a little bit, yeah. And then he's like, you know what? He's actually all right. Do you know what I mean? And then he's like, no, you're actually all right. And I think the combination of those two characters probably led me to do what I'm doing today. Yeah. It's such a shame we don't really have those characters as much in the room, do we?
So for a young player coming into Darrell's squad, coming into Forest Hill, coming into your ward, what key values do you live and breathe by for these youngsters that are coming in, or whoever's coming to your team? What values do you set in place? What is your identity of, okay, this is how you have to be?
Yeah. So it's tough in a technical sense because we're not fortunate to go out and get the players we want all of the time. So I can't really set a standard of technical ability or sometimes football knowledge. Like, for instance, last season, we had a very, very tough season and I had to deal with whoever turned up, right? Because we lost a lot of players from the year before. So sometimes I don't get to select the ability level, but what you can always select is the mentality. So once you doesn't matter how good someone is, and I've noticed that more and more. If their attitude's poor, it matters. If they got a great attitude and a great player, then it matters, right? But if you've got a great player and the attitude's poor, particularly for a club like ours, he's going to cause more problem than good. So he's more likely to upset 5 players, and you've only got him, and then those 5 players leave. You've got him and another 5 players. It's worse than the 5 that you had before. So you're better off with the 5 good ones and get rid of him, right? So I think mentality is key. I think players have to be able to take criticism, to want to improve. Be able to support one another out there. So be family on a match day, your family, your friends and family. And what's really tough, particularly with the type of players we get, is them taking criticism. Is really tough because a lot of them aren't used to it. They're not used to it at all. And then it becomes, like I said, going back to us, we didn't like it at first either. We didn't like it. I didn't like it when I first came to the changing room, but I think players have to be able to accept criticism, or at least want to learn to accept criticism, to want to improve their game, and that comes with criticism. And it can come with positive feedback, but also some of the old habits they're going to have to go. So I just think, for me, mentality is vital. It is vital. Like, someone who wants to come in and fight for the community as well, things like that. Like, you don't like, I don't want a player that wants to go up to, I don't know, who can we use? So many clubs. Let's say, okay, Lid is very far, right? Like Deal Town is very far. Yeah. You don't want someone who's going to want to go all the way to Lid and not care if you win or lose, and not have any passion. Like, do you know? So you need players who are going to give you 150%, win, lose, or draw, and that's all up here. That's all up there. So yeah, mentality.
So if you have a player where the mentality is not all there, we call it a bad eggs, obviously now, but it's talented player, like unbelievable player. What do you do to get him aligned into your value? How do you let him buy into your value? What do you do? Or do you just move him on?
I don't just move him on. With any player we try, okay? With any single player we try, but that runs out. That effort runs out after a little while. It's always squad or team before player. The player has to get into the team. The player has to come over and get into the culture over here. If they can't manage that, then there's a few conversations to be had, because generally they don't understand it. As far as they're concerned, they're the best player. So what's anything else about? Like, I don't have to like anybody in your team. I don't have to like the manager. I don't have to like the chairman. I'm the best player. So just literally their mentality is, you shut up and you play me where I want to play. Yeah, and then I'll win you the games. But the problem with that is, again, the unrest of all the other players. So though you have to get a talented player to buy in. He has to buy in. I'll probably get one of the older players, or sometimes it's not even an older player, it's a more mature player, to go and talk to him and have a little word with him about the expectations. Because when there's nothing better, and we've had many of these over the year, when you get that rough guy that, he's got attitude, and he spent 3 months there, 2 weeks there, 6 weeks there, 5 months there, up that level, down this level, and you get him for a season and you polish him up. That is one of the best feelings, right? That is one of the best feelings, but you kind of never do that at the detriment of the rest of your squad. It will be in the beginning. It's going to be a challenge. Some players are going to come to you, what's wrong with him? He didn't pass. And then you have to get I think you have to have your squad to have your mentality. So they have to be thinking like you're thinking. This player is talented. We need to try and get the best out of him. But if he upsets too much of us, then we get rid of him, right? But we are going to try to integrate him. So your club literally and your squad has to have your mentality, which is something, again, going back to your question before, how do I pick players? Again, like-minded players. You got to hate losing like me. Yeah, you got to love winning like me. Yeah, you got to be passionate like me. There's nothing worse than you've lost, you're passionate, and he's laughing and joking over there. Like, I want, when you walk into the change room, there should be a unified feeling, right? And that's what you get from having like-minded players. You got to have players that you would invite over to your house for dinner. You got to have staff that you'd be happy to invite over your house for dinner. So, but sorry to jump back to that question, but I think it kind of links in with having the right mentality.
That's perfect. That is so good to hear today. Obviously, we've heard a lot from Darrell today, and thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I've learned a lot from there. I'm hoping everyone's learned a lot from it, and the young managers out there can actually write a few things down, and we can learn from that. But again, thank you for listening, and thank you, Darrell, again for coming, and absolutely well done to Miles on his first podcast that we're actually doing. Anything you want to say to finish off, Darrell?
No, just thank you. Thank Miles for this opportunity to talk a lot. Just, and again, to all the young managers.
We spoke for about 35, 45 minutes here, and we haven't actually spoke about tactics of 4-4-2, 4-3-3, or even individual players. That's how deep football is. That's how deep football is. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, no. There's so much to talk about. We could go on for hours just talking about football, really. It's a great sport for so many different reasons, but we love it as much as it drives us crazy sometimes. Yeah, we hate it on those days where we've lost, but when you get that win,
tell me about it.